Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
You know, to take a page out of Captain John Regan's book, he was doing a solo broadcast, and he said, just three of us in the studio today, me and Smith and Weston. Well, just two of us in the studio today, me and Colt. Today's special broadcast, we're going to be talking about generators. How to size a generator. Whether you should consider gasoline, propane, diesel. What is a transfer switch? Do you need one? What about a portable generator versus a whole house generator? What about a manual generator versus an automatic generator? What about the maintenance? What kind of maintenance is required for a generator? What about fuel consumption rates? Now, gasoline, propane, diesel, do they use the same amount of fuel? Does it cost the same amount to operate each one? We're going to talk about that. What about a PTO-driven generator? That's one that hooks up to the back of a tractor. How big of a tractor? Well, if it has a power takeoff on the back, it can be from 20 horsepower on up. Yeah. And, we're going to talk about, does that make any sense? We're going to talk about electric start versus pull start. Buying a used generator. What about an inverter? What about a uninterruptible power system? For your computer. What about using that for emergency power? That's today's broadcast. Engineering today, Blake. Blake is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota at GCN. I'm Vincent Finelli. If you'd like to call us, we'll pay for the call. 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. Got an email from one of our students. His name is Keith. Keith D. Keith wanted to know more about generators. Keith, this broadcast is dedicated to you. Thank you for your email, and thank you for your interest in generators. And I'm so glad to hear that our class is interested in the intricacies of generators. Now, I'm not going to be able to do all of that today in terms of the intricacies, but what I will be able to do is give you a thumbnail sketch based on my thoughts, which is based on my experience about generators. I've been using generators. I've owned them for 29 years. My first generator was a used Homelight brand, 4,400 watt, single cylinder, 8 horsepower, Briggs & Stratton, industrial commercial engine, pull start, ran on gasoline. And the first thing that you learn about when you have a generator in that size range, 4,400 watts, 5,000 watts. And by the way, if we're going to cut to the chase, my recommendation is that you consider a single cylinder generator used pull start about 5,000 watts. And we're going to talk about why through the rest of this broadcast. So I paid $175 for it, and it worked fine. It had 2 handles on it. It was like in a tubular frame, and one person would get on one side of the handles, another person would get on the other side, and it would take 2 people to carry it. It was portable, did not have any wheels, but you don't use a generator all that often. So it worked fine for me. $175, I thought it was great. And when I moved, I sold it. I sold it for about what I paid for it. So if you buy it right, and you take care of it, and it's in good condition, you can probably, if you want to, sell it for about what you paid for it. But it has to be a name brand. If you get one that's not a name brand, you're going to have trouble selling it for what you think it's probably worth. All right. So let's start out with, do you need a generator? Do you need a generator, and how many watts should it be? Well, what's the first thing that happens when the electricity goes out? Well, typically that's in the wintertime, right? And typically it's at night. So the first thing that happens is you look for the flashlight with the dead batteries, right? Then you look for the matches and you look for the candles. And so that's the first thing you do because you really want lighting. That's number one. Well, if you have a portable generator, you are not going to have instantaneous lighting. You're not going to be able to flip that switch if it's a portable generator. You're going to have to go out and get it, start it, put some fuel in it, get it running, warm it up, run those extension cords to wherever you need them. Okay. That's assuming it's going to start. So what I've thought you might want to consider is wiring your house. And I'll get into this a little bit later. Wiring your house so you have, LED lighting. LED lighting already in your house, ready to go, running on 12 volts, and you just flip a switch, and there you go. Now, where would you do that? Well, what I did was I did it in the kitchen. I have LED lighting in the kitchen with a regular wall switch. Talk a little bit more about this later in a little more detail. And what I do is flip the switch. Well, I like this LED lighting so much, it's indirect, that it's on most of the time. It illuminates the kitchen because we had some dark areas, and it does a nice job illuminating. And it does it on about 20 watts, which is very, very low power consumption on 12 volts. So we'll talk a little bit more about how to do that in just a few minutes. So what size generator makes a lot of sense? Well, there are small portable generators in the 3,000 to 4,000 watt range. And what can you do with that? Well, a refrigerator can be operated on it. A refrigerator is typically 600 to 700 watts. But a compressor with an electric motor or a device with an electric motor takes about 2 to 3 times the watts to start that compressor or that electric motor than it does to run it. So if you have a refrigerator that normally runs at 700 watts, to start it up is going to take 1,400 to 2,100 watts. Keep that in mind. So compressors and electric motors take more starting current, 2 to 3 times as much as running current. Now, microwave oven, you might consider that. Now, they typically, in today's sizes, are running between 1,100 and 1,500 watts. But again, they take more power to start them than to run them. So you might use twice as much current to start them, like 3,000 watts to start your microwave oven. But how long are you going to run it? I don't know, a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. So you're not going to run it for a long time. So keep that in mind. Some of us have sump pumps. I don't, but some of us have sump pumps. And heck, if your sump pump isn't running and you need it to run, you can have some flooding issues. They draw typically about 600 watts. But remember, that's 600 watts running. That's not 600 watts starting. It could be 1,200 to 1,800 watts to start that sump pump. And typically sump pumps start, stop, and they cycle a lot, right? Every few minutes maybe? Okay. Here's something that you can put in the back of your mind to figure out the conversion between watts and horsepower. 1 horsepower is 746 watts. 746 watts equals 1 horsepower. That's assuming no losses, right? No friction losses. So really, you're probably looking at 800 watts per horsepower. So we're still talking about that small portable generator. And you can, power up some lighting, maybe 200 to 400 watts of lighting. And a television, well, if you've got to have that, a television can consume up to 200 watts, unless you have a really big one. Okay, so if you have a normal size flat panel television screen, 200 watts. And that includes, that Blu-ray player or that DVD player. Now, the louder you turn up the volume, the more watts you use. So if you like it really loud, it's going to use more watts than if you keep it quiet. So that's the 3,000 to 4,000 watt portable generator. Refrigerator, microwave oven, sump pump, lighting, and your television. If you move on up to a mid-sized, still portable generator, let's say the 5,000 to 8,500 watt size, you can power some things that you would have difficulty powering with your small portable generator. What would they be? Well, a portable heater, about 1,300, 1,500 watt range. Your computer? Well, it depends on your computer. Mine usually consume about 100 watts. If you've got a big monitor, you might be in the 200 watt range. Now, I'm not talking about the printer. If you've got a laser printer can consume 1,500 watts. And the startup on a laser printer consumes an enormous amount of electricity. So I'm just talking about the computer and the screen, the keyboard and the mouse. And, your router, about 100 to 200 watts. If you have a heating system and you want to power that, you can still do it with that 5,000 to 8,500 watt generator. Now, the natural gas and propane heating systems probably use about 300 watts, while the oil burner types use more electricity in the 5 to 600 watt range. Now, the heating systems may have an electric blower motor, and again, when they start up, 2 to 3 times the current of running. And you may have a circulator pump if you have a hydronic system, and that may take 1 to 2 to 300 watts, depending on the size of the pump. Remember, 1 horsepower equals 746 watts. So if you see 1/6 of a horsepower, you can just do the arithmetic and figure out how many watts that motor is going to take and multiply it times 2 to 3 for the startup. I'm going to go into larger systems, larger generators, 10,000 watt types when we come back. I'm Vin Finelli. About a serious topic, generators. And a generator can save your life. So we're up to larger generators, the 10,000 to 15,000 watt size. We'll call them a stationary generator. They're too heavy to be portable. And they can power all of the things that a smaller generator can power, the previous ones we discussed. And they can power a clothes washer. Clothes washers that I've measured the internet says they're 1,200 watts. Well, I've measured them, and ours is 700 watts. So we'll say 7 to 1,200 watts. An electric dryer is about 5,000 watts. A cooktop, if you want to run a burner, is about 5,000 watts. Electric stove. So here's the point of that. Do you really need to power your electric dryer? Do you really need to do that? I don't think so. If you're in a grid down type situation, or if you're in an ice storm, are you really worried about that clothes dryer? So the point here is planning. You want to shed as many watts as you can prior to needing that generator. So if you're looking at, let's say you're considering moving, well, and you can build your own house, and you want to be independent, go for that propane cook stove. Okay? Go for a refrigerator that is energy efficient, that has lots of foam insulation. Avoid the ice maker. Do you really need ice? I don't think so. Do you really need to have a fountain dispenser on the front for water? I don't think so. Do you really need to have a TV screen on that refrigerator? I don't think so. So you want to shed watts as much as you can, because you're going to have to feed this generator. Now that 10,000 watt generator is hungry, really hungry. And we're going to get into how much fuel these generators consume in just a minute. When you buy your generator, don't wait for that storm. Don't wait for the forecast of the storm to run out and get one. Get one while you have plenty of time to make that selection. Figure out how many watts you're going to need. And you know what a great way to do it is? Tonight. Tonight at 6 o'clock, you go to that breaker panel at your home and you shut off all the breakers except for the refrigerator, freezer, and the necessities, like if you have a medical condition. Certainly don't shut that off. Okay? But the lights, they go off. And you've got about an hour before it gets dark. And you think about, wow, we don't have any electricity. What are we going to do? And you sit at the kitchen table with your family. Your whole family's involved in this. That means if you've got an electric stove or a microwave, can't use it. You put some tape across your refrigerator doors just to remind you, I can't go in there. You put some tape across the toilet flush handle because you have a well and you're not going to get any more water. If you flush that toilet, that's it. You get one flush. And you put some tape across the kitchen faucet because you don't have any water there either. And your cell phone, of course, you put that away because you don't have any electricity to charge it. And then you sit at the kitchen table with a pen and paper and you write down, you discuss, what is it that we don't like about this? What do we need to have running? Do we need that electric can opener? I don't think so. Manual can opener is fine. So you figure out what you need versus what you want. And that's how you size your generator. Does that make sense? Okay. So what is the difference between surge watts and maximum wattage that these generators say? They'll say peak watts, 7,000. Surge watts, 7,000. Maximum 7,000. That means for a really, really short time, seconds, a generator can produce that much electricity, but only for a couple seconds. Then it's back to the rated wattage. And I would say the rated wattage is probably overrated to begin with. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we come back. I thought I'd be able to get through this. I have typed up 14 pages of notes, things that I'd like to cover. I just turned to page number 2. So what I've decided to do is call this part 1, and we'll have the rest of the parts, in future broadcasts, probably on a Friday. Or if one of our instructors is unable to make it, I'll do this, this generator broadcast in those circumstances. So what is the difference between maximum watts, surge watts, and rated watts? Rated watts is the amount of power of your generator, probably a portable generator, that it can produce continuously. Now, maximum or surge watts, that's the amount of power that your generator can produce for a short time. And when I say a short time, I mean a couple seconds. Literally. So motor starting is a good example of maximum wattage required. Typically, I mentioned before that an electric motor or compressor draws 2 to 3 times the running current. So a refrigerator that consumes 700 watts when running may need as much as 2,100 watts to start up. So keep that in mind when you size your generator. Now, there's a trick that you can use to size a smaller generator than you may think you need. And that's where I would be parked. I would want to have a smaller generator because they are more economical to feed. And when I get into the feeding of generators, you will not believe how much fuel they consume. So a smaller generator may be better, but it needs to have the voltage output that you need. And I would probably not consider one that does not have 240 volt output. 120 and 240. Now sometimes it's called 110 and 220. That's the same thing, okay? 110 and 220 equals 120 and 240. It's just nomenclature. All right, so we talked about the rated watts. Now, can you use a generator during inclement weather? Sure. They're designed for that. And, in cooler weather, that's great because most of the generators that we're talking about that you'll be buying are air-cooled. And cooler weather's fine. But you don't want to run it in the rain or it gets rained on. So if you've got some way of protecting the generator from being rained on or snowed on or hailed on, that would be the way to go. So you can use your generator in inclement weather, but never run a generator indoors. Never. Let me say it a different way. Never run a generator indoors. But you do need to protect it and the cables, like the extension cords that you may be using, from being shorted in the rain. You could cause an electrocution to occur. Pets, if your pet's outside and the cord is being rained on, and there's a connect between the rain, the puddles, and your pet or you, there could be an electrocution. So I would not want to run a generator in the rain without it being covered up somehow. Now that could be on the porch. That could be, some kind of a cover over it. Now, I'm not talking about put a tarp over it because it would prevent the cooling and end up with a fire. Right? Can you vent a generator from inside outside to outside? Well, you never want to run a generator in the home or an enclosed area. Generators that are of the portable size are not designed to be run indoors. You need lots of ventilation. And what's the ventilation for? The ventilation is to cool the generator because they produce a lot of heat. So you need to have cool air surrounding the generator so that it does not overheat. And you also need to have lots of atmosphere around it to dilute the toxic fumes, the toxic exhaust of your generator. So the answer is never run a generator inside, in the home, in the garage. You don't want to do that. And it can kill people and pets. I'm talking about the exhaust fumes. And what about fuel? Now here's a really common problem with generators. Everybody I know who has a generator has had this problem. Everybody except me. And what is it? Well, they get a generator and they're all happy with their new purchase. And they bring it home and get some gasoline, they pour it in, they start up, and they go, wow, it starts up great. You know, they've already put the oil in it. And they've read part of the manual, just enough to get by. They start it up, and then they go, hey, let's get that table lamp, and they plug it in. They go, wow, it works. It works. And then they put it away. It's in the garage, or it's on the back porch. The problem is that when you go to start it again, if you haven't started it in a month or more, and usually it's more, it won't start. It won't start because of the new fuels that your government has demanded that the oil companies make has ethanol alcohol in it. Ethanol in gasoline is a problem. It causes gumming of the carburetors. The carburetor is probably the single most complex unit of your generator. And it gets gummed up and it will prevent the fuel-air mixture from properly volatilizing, and you won't be able to start your generator. I've seen it, how often? 100% of the time. 100% of the time with people who have generators. They start them, they set them, and they forget them. So here's the answer. I recommend that if you have one of these generators, and you're not going to use it all the time, you keep it in a like a garage where moisture doesn't get to it. Keep your garage door closed when it's not in use, meaning the generator is not in use. And you drain the fuel tank when you think that you're not going to use it for 30 days. There's a little drain, and you can drain out the fuel, and you can put that fuel in your lawnmower if you're going to use your lawnmower. And you start that generator outside, and you use up all the fuel in the carburetor. You run it until it just runs out of fuel. Then you will not have that problem of the carburetor gumming up. So what kind of gasoline should you use? Well, regular unleaded is what most of them use. Some people will spend the extra money to buy premium fuel without ethanol. Now, if you can, and you can be absolutely certain that that's what you're buying, then you can probably extend that time between using the generator and not using it and having that carburetor gum up to a couple of months. But it's a problem. Here's another problem. So if you don't use your generator very often and it's a battery start, push button start generator, all lead acid batteries slowly lose their charge when they're sitting idle. They self-discharge. So to prevent that from happening, you have to charge them. But these are little batteries. These are smaller than car batteries. So if you put a big car battery charger on it, you'll overheat the battery and destroy it. So you really want what's called a trickle charger, like 1 ampere or less. These are those little battery maintainer types. Now you don't have to buy the battery maintainer brand that's like $30 or $40. You can buy a very small one. And the Chinese tool outlet, Harbor Freight, has one for like $4.99, which is about the right capacity, the right amperage to just maintain a charge. And we have about 6 or 7 of those here at the farm, where when a tractor's not being used, we'll just hook up one of those little chargers to each one of the tractors, during the winter, so that they don't lose their charge. How long does it take for a lead acid battery to discharge? About a month. About a month. Now, this is true because you've seen vehicles that aren't used for a month, and you go out to start them and they don't start because the battery's dead. It's like, oh, the battery's dead. Why is that? Because they self-discharge. Now, if you allow a battery, an automotive type battery, like truck battery for a battery for your car, or if you have one of those electric start lawnmowers, to discharge past the point of no return, you'll never be able to recharge it, and you'll probably have to replace it. So how much does that cost? Well, the battery for a small generator might be between $40 and $80. $40 and $80. To me, that's a lot of money. So I'd rather buy one of those $4.99 chargers, trickle chargers, and put a little trickle of current just to keep the battery topped off. Now, of course, you need to check the electrolyte. And when you do that, I would wear gloves, like latex gloves, and glasses. And go to a YouTube video and find out how to check the electrolyte level on your battery, because you don't want to get sulfuric acid on you. And if you do, immediately, don't hesitate, immediately wash it off. Immediately. Okay? But make sure you wear safety glasses. Let's talk about fuels. Gasoline versus propane versus diesel. And we'll start with fuel consumption. Now, that 4,400 watt home light generator that I bought back in 1989 would consume about 1 gallon per hour. 1 gallon per hour. So a typical new 5,000 watt generator will consume about 18 gallons of gasoline in 24 hours. Now, you may say, well, I'm not going to run under full load. I may use it just, half load or a quarter load. But because of the design of the generator, and because the engine is going to operate at 3,600 RPM, it's going to consume nearly the same amount of gasoline under full load as partial load. So to put it in perspective, how much fuel are we going to run in 24 hours? You're going to use more than 3 5-gallon gas cans. How much is it going to cost? In today's numbers, $65 a day to run it for 24 hours. $65 worth of fuel. We'll be right back. Here we're talking about generators. This is part 1 of several parts, and the remaining parts will be in future broadcasts. So we're talking about fuel and fuel consumption. In the best case, I think you're going to be using about 3/4 of a gallon of gasoline per hour of runtime. 3/4 of a gallon of gasoline per hour of runtime. So a 5-gallon gas can is going to last you about 6.5 hours. We had an ice storm here in Missouri. We also had one in Virginia. 11 days. 11-day power outage during this ice storm. So let's say you were going to use your generator, this 5,000 watt generator, which is my best guess at what you should consider. 240 volts, 5,000 watts, 120, 240. Gasoline powered, air cooled, with an industrial type or industrial commercial engine. That's going to be your best long-term value. Okay, so that 11-day power outage with a generator like I just described is going, let's say you're going to use it 8 hours a day, times 3/4 of a gallon an hour. You're going to be using 66 gallons in 11 days. Let's convert that to 5-gallon gas cans, 13.2 of them. And if you want to know how much that's going to cost, at $2.40, which is the current price per gallon in our neck of the woods in Missouri, it's $158.40 for a minimal amount of electricity. The absolute minimum you can stand. 8 hours a day for 11 days. $158.40. The point I'm trying to make, class, is you're going to use way more fuel than you thought. Now, we have a generator, and I'm going to talk more about this later, probably in another broadcast. And our generator is 5,000 watts. I had a 10,000 watt generator, and I thought, I don't want to feed that thing. So I sold it. I bought it used. We can talk more about that in another broadcast. But our generator is a real 5,000 watts. It's diesel. And it uses about 1/2 a gallon of diesel fuel per hour. Now, here are the real numbers. We're going to talk about British thermal units. Okay, that's a way of stating how much energy is in fuel. So we're going to talk about gallons. So in 1 gallon of diesel fuel, there's 138,000 BTUs. I'm rounding. So 100 for radio, we're going to round rather than be exactly precise. 138,000 BTUs of energy in a gallon of diesel. A gallon of gasoline has about 115,000. A gallon of propane has about 91,000. So here's what that means. It means that if you have a gasoline-powered generator, you're going to use at least 20% more gasoline than you would diesel. At least 20% more. I'm thinking more like 30 to 40% more. And a gasoline-powered generator will last less time, less run hours. If you have a propane-powered generator, that will use 51% more fuel than the diesel, measured in gallons. So diesel has the highest energy content at 138,000 BTUs per gallon. Gasoline, 115,000 BTUs per gallon. And propane, 91,000. Which fuel is the most problematic? In my opinion, gasoline. Now you can take that 5,000 watt gasoline powered generator, and if you have a propane tank at your home, you could get a conversion unit that will convert a gas powered generator to propane. You'll need fewer oil changes. It'll run a little cooler. It'll run a lot cleaner, but it won't produce as much power. But you'll have a huge supply of fuel that does not go bad in a couple months, and you won't have to clean out that gummed up carburetor. So here's some thoughts that I had for you about generators, but I've only gotten to page 3. Haven't even finished page 3. So we've got a lot more to talk about with generators in the coming broadcast. This was part 1. Class, above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you. Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Here we go. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. I want to let you know, class, that if you'd like to take us along with you or listen on your phone, 605-477-3249. That's the listen line. 605-477-3249. Zeno Radio's got it up and running, and it's working great. 605-477-3249. And thank you, Zeno Radio. This hour, Stephen Heuer. Stephen Heuer of Synergistic Nutrition. Website, sgn80.com. sgn80.com. Welcome, Stephen Heuer.
Thank you, Vincent. Good morning. How are you today?
Hey, I got to tell you, I feel so much better. And a lot of that has to do with you. Huge percentage.
Thank you.
You, and your new friend, Dr. Norman Shealy, and Dr. Bill Deagle. Yeah. Norm Shealy's pretty cool, isn't he?
He's very cool. I really appreciate what he's doing. A man of his stature, trying to introduce people to the holistic path. It's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I wanted to thank you for exposing me and encouraging me and providing the ingredients for my recovery. And I'm specifically talking about lime water. I'm talking about colostrum. I'm talking about carbon 60 and other supplements. I just love what you have. And so, class, if you're wondering why you get a chance to hear Stephen Heuer as often as you do on USA Prepares, it's because of a couple things. It's because, 1, of our friendship, and 2, his products work. And how do I know? I consume them. And I want you to hear firsthand the kinds of experiences that I am finding with the products that Stephen Heuer has offered. And according, of course, One World Way. Thank you, Stephen Heuer.
Of course, yes. Yeah, of course. This seems to be my assignment. My lifetime assignment is to get sick, figure out how to fix it, and then introduce that information to others so that they don't have to go the allopathic drug route, which is a most unfortunate state of affairs, that most people in the country are not educated enough about nature's path, and they end up, when they get sick, going the allopathic route, which doesn't actually address the cause of disease, doesn't address them getting well. They are only addressing symptoms, but they're introducing, of course, a drug which is most of the time not a natural substance in nature, so it's toxic to the human body. So there's going to be consequences to their vital organs, like their liver and kidneys usually, when they take the drug. So, no one has to suffer if they just have the right information, and you're not going to get that information on regular mainstream channels. You're going to get it searching for it on the internet or listening to shows like yours.
Stephen, I haven't told you this, but I went to a doctor's appointment, a checkup with Mrs. Finelli, and I have the same doctor as Mrs. Finelli, and so does our son. So when we go to an appointment, all three of us go, okay, and we make sure that we fully understand what is being discussed, so there are no miscommunications, because three of us hear the same thing. Well, this week I went, and we see the same nurse all the time, and the same physician all the time, and she's great. And so the physician left the exam room for Mrs. Finelli. Mrs. Finelli had pneumonia, and so she was getting a checkup to see how it is being resolved, and it's being resolved. This is her second bout of it, and 2 in a row. So the physician left the room. The nurse came back and said, to Mrs. Finelli, okay, here is your information to take with you and read. Looks like this is being resolved. Great. Oh, hey, Vincent, by the way, this is for you. You have been terminated by your pulmonologist. So
your doctor's terminated your relationship because you won't comply?
That's exactly what it... Yeah, that's exactly right. So my pulmonologist, who was referred to me by my internist, the same doctor as Mrs. Finelli, fired me. Literally.
Right, yeah.
So
that's very funny. But that's good. It's good in the sense that you're sticking up for what you know to be true, and you're not going to be manipulated. That's great.
Non-compliance. So in my permanent record, of which I'm sure the government has a copy, it's Vinny's not being a good boy. So, and here's what happened. I wanted to have a prescription for an antibiotic in case, okay? And what happens with this particular pulmonologist is she likes to spend time in the hospital. So if you want an appointment, it takes 2 months. So if I get sick, I only have 2 choices. Go to the emergency room or go to urgent care. I am not going to be able to see my pulmonologist for a couple of months. So Mrs. Finelli called and said, hey, Vincent wants to know if he can have a prescription on hand. And they said, well, we'll get back to you. They got back to us and they said, you're going to have to come in for an appointment. So Mrs. Finelli said, okay. What's your soonest appointment? 2 months. So Mrs. Finelli said, Mrs. Finelli kind of, I wouldn't say she blew a gasket, but she was sticking up for her husband, okay? She said, no, that's not going to work so well. I got fired as a result of that for what's called non-compliance. You hit the nail right on the head. And so you are the third person that I've mentioned this to, and everybody said the same thing. One person said, great. You said, great. I believe that's what you said. And the other person said, congratulations.
Yeah. No. I mean, the actual, like, you could go back to the Greek term, means teacher. And yet, how often do you hear a traditional medical doctor spend an hour educating you on anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, so that you, the pupil, student, peer, whatever, end up becoming as knowledgeable as he is or she is? And that's the actual correct role, is education, not, ordering, not prescriptions. It's just education so you have an ability to make an informed decision. That's what I spend a lot of time doing, is trying to educate people so that we all level the playing field. I'm not somebody above you. I'm your equal, and we're sharing and learning from each other. And so I enjoy, sharing what I've learned because I enjoy people being happy. I know that the happier people are as a society, the freer we become. And it's been actually said that if everyone in the entire world could be extremely happy for one 24-hour period, we'd be liberated from all the enslavement systems that exist in this earth. And, I know the mainstream system is trying to always induce fear in people and create false flags and all kinds of negative things so that people feel like society, you can't trust anybody and society is a scary place. But the truth is that, if you get healthy and you tune into the natural energy of creation, which is God, then it's positive and it's love and it's happiness and it's joy.
Mm-hmm. And Dr. Shealy, I'm sure would agree with everything that you've said. And he also says that if you are happier, you will live longer. If you are unhappy, you will die sooner.
Well, that's why it's so important to pay enough attention to the positive in life, more so than the negative. Yeah, it's fine to pay attention to the negative, define the problem so that you can go to the solution, and then spend more time on the solution. Absolutely.
So can we, now we're going to be talking about cardiovascular health for the rest of this broadcast hour, but could we talk about colostrum for a few minutes? You've got me taking colostrum, and I think it is so important. Well, I got to tell you, I told my medical doctors this, and I said, well, what do you think about colloidal silver? Oh, about the blue man, you don't want to turn blue. What do you think about carbon-60? What's carbon-60? What do you think about colostrum? Colostrum? Colostrum. So the things that I've asked them that you and I have talked about, that you have recommended that I consume, and I do, they are not necessarily approving that.
They're probably not even on their radar screen.
No, it's not. It's not on their radar screen. And, my internist, I love her. I really do. She's wonderful. She's a female, and she's a female doctor. Okay, so for some reason, she is taking care of me and our son, and I think she's fabulous. I think she really is on top of her game, and she's really, really, I consider her excellent. But she's learning some things from me, and I think, although she hasn't said it, she's wondering, gee, I really would love to know the outcome of what you found out. This self-imposed research that you're doing on yourself, for yourself, with your medical friends like Stephen Heuer and Norm Shealy and Bill Deagle. So they've never heard of a Myers cocktail either.
Right.
So all the things that that you and I talk about and do, that's all new to medical doctors and nurses. Seriously, now they do know about colloidal silver.
Yeah, but unfortunately the system is geared to only compensate these physicians and nurses for prescribing and for surgery and things like that. I mean, their whole income is based upon practicing the standard of care. So the reason why these doctors typically, when you get, you go to your oncologist and you get the diagnosis of cancer, but, you don't follow the recommendations of chemo or surgery or radiation. Instead, you do your natural thing, and then you get well, and then you go back to the doctor, and he doesn't even ask you how you got well, because he can't practice the holistic method without risking losing his license. So.
Yeah, and what they did with me with the colloidal silver and ionic silver is the blue man. You don't want to be blue. We got our own blue man here at the hospital, and you don't want to do what he did. I said, I know what he did. He made his own, right? And he used a saline solution, right? Right. Well, that's why he's turned. Stephen Heuer is with us, SGN80.com, SGN80.com. Stephen, what number would you like our class to call should they decide that they'd like to talk with you?
Toll free, 88. Oh yeah, toll free 888-988-3325. That's 888-988-3325. Okay,
and are you available for consultations? Way you consult with me. Okay. Okay, and what number should they call for that? Same number?
Yeah. Well, they're going to call first to book an appointment, and then they're sent a health evaluation form that they have to fill out, and a date and time is set either on the phone or after they fill that out, and then they're going to call back a different number for the actual consult, or I call them. Typically, it's either way.
Okay. So, class, if you'd like to be in contact with Synergistic Nutrition, Stephen Heuer's company, 888-988-3325. Stephen, colostrum. Now, I'm going to use some words, and I'd like you to react to the words that I'm going to use about what I think when I think of colostrum. Fountain of youth.
Do you want me to react to each one right away, or do you want to say a list of them first? So in essence, it is, because it's the first 3 days of milk of any mammals after it gives birth. Any mammals, that's the first 3 days of milk is colostrum, and it's basically the substitute immune system. So the baby, human or animal, has yet to develop an immune system, but the mother has an immune system, and she transfers all of the immunoglobulins necessary for the baby or the human to have an immune system in through the colostrum. And, of course, there's a ton of growth factors. There's a ton of what's called IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor, in colostrum. And that's also what causes you to develop and rebuild and heal the intestinal tract. So colostrum is frequently recommended as a way to help heal a leaky gut, because it's naturally high in IGF-1, which is a repair hormone, causes repair of all tissues, and it's full of those immunoglobulins. So you were taking it when you had your respiratory condition to try and eliminate the particular pathogen that was causing your infection, and I'm sure it helped, but the inventor of this particular colostrum that we carry, he specifically invented it for his wife, because his wife at one point in her life had a radiation treatment done that was right on her thymus gland, and so her thymus gland was destroyed, so now she can't make any T cells, the white blood cells that play a role in your immune system. So she was getting infections all the time and almost dying from them, and so he started to acquire colostrum from different farmers and supply it freshly to her, and that would alleviate all her symptoms. Her infections would go away. She'd be normal and healthy. And, of course, then he'd run out of the colostrum. So it became inconvenient. So he sourced dairy farmers, I believe it's in New Zealand, who are supplying grass-fed colostrum to him, and he puts it through a process that's unique, where most of them will pasteurize it for the 15 to 20 seconds at a fairly high temperature, 100 to 61 degrees, which denatures it quite a bit so that it's not very effective. He only does it for 8 seconds and then cools it back down immediately to 34 degrees, I think it is, and that renatures or restores the protein structure so that all the immunoglobulins are functional. So then he removes the fat, because the body doesn't need this large amount of fat that's in the colostrum. It would just sort of like clog up the system. And then he uses lecithin to attach it to the colostrum protein, which makes it a liposomal product. And all of our membranes of our cells are what's called a lipid bilayer membrane, and that means that if a lipid comes in contact with it, it will absorb readily into the cell. So this type of colostrum that you're taking, colostrum LD, is 1,500% better absorbed than a typical colostrum. And so it has much more power to help a person heal their digestive tract or support their immune system. And so this became the product that rescued his wife from chronic risk of dying from infections. And so she lives a normal, healthy life so long as she takes this product.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's quite fabulous, and that's why I wanted to divert the discussion a little bit toward colostrum, because literally the words that come to my mind is our fountain of youth. And class, if you'd like to get the same colostrum that I get, it's from Stephen Heuer, and you can get that from Synergistic Nutrition, sgn80.com. If you'd like to call and talk to one of his associates, 888-988-3325, 888-988-3325. This is not a commercial. This is an endorsement. We'll be right back. Stephen, I got to tell you, right after this broadcast, I'm looking forward to, I'm getting one of the vehicles inspected, and right after that, I'm coming back to the farm. I'm going to hop on my old 1974 Ford 3000 diesel tractor. It's uncomfortable. It's got manual steering, and I'm going to be pulling around a 4,000-pound roller to level out the ground. And what I'm saying is, I'm going to be doing something that is not a lot of fun for most people, right? But I am so looking forward to it because I have been introduced to the fountain of youth, and I'm not exaggerating.
I got you. You've got the energy to do it. So I always say that the biggest factor in success is energy, or having the energy. It enables you to look at whatever the job is and say, I can do that. So I'm glad to hear that. When you're rolling in your pasture or whatever, is this to prepare the ground for a garden, or what are you going to do?
Okay, well, we live on a farm, and we have 241 acres.
Okay.
And what happens during the wintertime, so half of it is grass, and the grass is for the cows. But during the winter, the rocks pop up, and we're in the Ozark Mountains, so rocks just pop up, and we can't cut the grass with our hay mower because the rocks will chew up the mower. So there's only certain times during the year when we can push these rocks down. So what it is, believe it or not, it's like a 500-gallon propane tank, an old propane tank that was taken out of service. An axle was put through the center of it. We fill it with water, so it has so it's really, really, really heavy. And then it's on this heavy frame, and all we do is pull this thing around with a tractor and go around in circles, and it just rolls the land flatter. So we've had a lot of rain. There's a lot of moisture in the ground, and all we do is just roll it. And it's to prepare the grass for easier mowing and smoother ride. So I have the energy to do all this. I have the desire to do all this. I've got the get up and go to do it. And I believe that a huge, huge portion of that is because of the fountain of youth, which we know as colostrum. And so, class, here's all I do. I take 2 tablespoons and about 8 ounces of water, and I mix it up first thing in the morning, last thing at night, and I just drink it down. Now, it's probably, some people might say, it's not all that pleasant tasting. Well, my answer is, there are ways you can make it more pleasant, but I'm saying, I don't care about that. It works.
To me, it smells pleasant. It smells almost like vanilla, and to me, it's super pleasant. And if you want to add a little bit of unheated honey to your mix to sweeten it a little bit, it's even more delicious. It's so easy to get down, so pleasant. I was thinking that part of the reason why you're getting so much energy from it is that when you introduce these immune system factors that kill off pathogens in the body, then your immune system doesn't have to expend any energy killing off pathogens, and all that is freed up to give you physical energy. So that's one of the reasons you get the energy. The other thing is that it's very good for your brain. So there's certain nutrients in colostrum that have been proven to improve memory and brain function, which of course is partly your physical energy as well.
Let me respond to that. So I've done something today that I very, very, very rarely do, which is go solo. Okay. Normally, I like to be just the guy who is maybe the interviewer. Okay. But today I got a request to do more about generators. So I thought I'll just do it. That's something I don't do. And so when you talk about brain function, absolutely. I just sat down over a period of a couple of days, just typed up my thoughts. I did 14 pages of typed up thoughts about how to buy a generator, how much fuel they use. I'm going to talk about how to buy a used one. I'm going to talk about, I've talked about fuel consumption, diesel versus propane versus gasoline. What I'm saying is, I had the desire, the energy, the stick-to-itiveness to do that, and prior to that, I probably would have said, I'd rather not do it. This is amazing.
That's great. Good job. Congratulations.
Well, but here's what, there's a negative side to it. I thought I could get this broadcast completed. I can't. I got to page 3 of 14 pages. So what I thought would be just how to buy a generator and, select one and the right size and the wattage and fuel, and really easy to do. I've got to do like 4 more broadcasts to finish that. That's right. This is, when I said the fountain of youth,
that shows your mind is very detailed, and you can only be detailed if your mind is, firing on all cylinders, so that's great.
What I'm saying is, Stephen, it works. It works.
Yeah, it does. It definitely does. It's a wonderful product, and I one time had a severe lung infection that I drank fresh colostrum, a pint of it, and my symptoms were gone the very same day. Like they were gone by like 99%. So yeah, I know this stuff works fantastically well. That's why I encourage you to get the fresh stuff when you had your severe infection. But I guess you didn't have access to a good product. But yeah, colostrum's a wonderful food, and more people should use it that are dealing with any kind of a health issue. It'll help them.
Well, I am so impressed. I really am. So if you want a class, 888-988-3325. This is an endorsement. No kidding. And if you can't, well, I would be very surprised if you don't hear this in my voice. I'd be very surprised that how I feel, how I'm coming through, the sound of my voice, all that. It ought to be obvious.
Yeah, you sound 100% genuine, authentic to me.
Yeah. So, Stephen, cardiovascular health, that's a huge problem, right? For most people, 50 plus, right?
Yep, it's a big problem. And it's like, 31.9% of all deaths in 2010 were heart attacks. So, $315 billion they spent on that. I think it's third or fourth on the list of things that kill people. Cancer, I think, is number one. Yeah, it's a big deal, and people walk around not knowing, because the artery, as it gets plugged up, you really can't tell until it gets really occluded around the heart itself. And so that's many years in the making usually. But, it's not something you want to ignore. And if you do have a cardiovascular condition you're currently aware of, one of the things doctors do nowadays, or the only thing that they do nowadays, is they look just for the fat levels in the blood. They look for the cholesterol, the HDL, the LDL, the triglycerides. They look for those things as the gold standard for determining your risk for cardiovascular disease. And a more accurate test, because it's been proven, 50% of people that die of heart attacks have normal lipid profile pictures, normal triglycerides, normal HDL, normal LDL, and yet they still have a heart attack. So I consider looking for the lipid levels in the blood as the most least effective means of determining cardiovascular risk, and a more effective means of determining cardiovascular risk is the level of homocysteine in the system. And so a person's body, when it's chronically inflamed, typically cardiovascular disease goes hand in hand with chronic inflammation. Disease in general does go hand in hand with chronic inflammation. And so you'll have more cytokines and more of this homocysteine in the system. And it's believed that this is a irritant to the lining of the arteries. So I would request, if somebody was wanting to check their cardiovascular health, I'd say have the doctor check for your homocysteine levels first. And then the thing that's effective in reducing homocysteine is 5-methylene tetrahydrofolate. That's the active form of folic acid. So it's become quite a new field of human health endeavor to basically deal with the fact that most people are undermethylators. In a state of disease, the body's usually not able to take this chemical called CH3, carbon hydrogen 3, that's called a methyl donor, and that's supposed to couple and uncouple with chemical reactions in the tissues, performing, detoxification, energy production, protein synthesis, immunity, just about everything. And that process is either you're deficient in that chemical, CH3, or you're not doing the coupling and uncoupling fast enough, and so you're an undermethylator. And so it becomes important for people to take the already active or methylated form of B vitamins. So when I said the 5-methylene tetrahydrofolate, I was referring to the already active form of folate. And that would be a B vitamin that is effective in bonding to the homocysteine and changing it back into the amino acid methionine, the harmless amino acid called methionine. That's a good amino acid for your liver to produce glutathione, or for your sulfur needs for your hair or skin or nails, since those are high in sulfur amino acids. And, that could be taking a good B complex. Like we have a product called Active Bs. We have another product called Animus. So Active Bs just has all the B vitamins in their active state, and then Animus has the higher levels, a more therapeutic dose of the 5-methylene tetrahydrofolate plus the active form of B12 and B6 and a few others. So taking that every day could be a way to help stop the progression of cardiovascular disease. But many people already have the plaque buildup to begin with, and so you have to take supplementation and eat correctly to remove the existing plaque. So, again, I've said this before, that the most important diet to be on to reverse disease and improve health is called the blood type diet. And that diet will be the most conducive to any health condition improving. And so that is the foundation. And also oils, it's important not to cook with vegetable oils. So even olive oil. Vegetable oils have they're carbon chains with hydrogen in the middle of the carbon chain and carbon around it. They have openings on this hydrogen-carbon chain that allow for oxygen to come in and bond to that, becoming a lipid peroxide, which is a powerful oxidant or free radical that creates damage on the lining of the artery. So when you cook your food, you want to steam it, or if you're going to dry cook it, you can dry cook it, but cooking it in water is best, and then add your olive oil on afterwards for your spaghetti or whatever you're making. Then that dietary precaution in place, the existing plaque that may already be in the arteries, there's a couple things you need to do. One of them is that plaque frequently has calcium buildup in the artery lining, stiffening the artery and making part of the plaque material. And so you need vitamin K2, vitamin A, and vitamin D, all three of those fat-soluble vitamins to help remove the calcium. And it's been proven in studies, in animal studies, that you can remove calcification that's built up in the arteries by giving an animal vitamin K2 in the form of minoquinone 7, not minoquinone 4. So we have a product called K2 Plus that has all three of those fat-soluble vitamins. That would be the first supplement to take to help with arterial cleanliness. And I'll tell you more on the other side.
Yeah. One more time. What's it called again, Stephen?
That's called K2 Plus.
K2 Plus. Okay, we'll be right back with Stephen Heuer. Stephen Heuer's with us, sgn80.com, sgn80.com. Phone number 888-988-3325. Stephen, you're talking about K2 Plus. Please continue.
Yeah, so that's the product that will effectively support creating what's called matrix GLA protein, which then removes the calcium from the arteries and cleans up that. But arterial plaque is not just consisting of calcification, it also consists of cholesterol and what's called foam cells. So to get rid of the cholesterol and the foam cells, you want to increase what's called your nitric oxide levels. So nitric oxide is something that is produced by the healthy lining of the arteries, and it's produced from the amino acid called arginine. But if you just take arginine as a supplement, it will only last for seconds in terms of increasing the nitric oxide levels. So nutraceutical science has come along, and they've been able to take and create these whey peptide fractions and also what's called arginine alpha-ketoglutarate. And so when you take that particular formula, it's called nitric oxide endurance, then you get a 4 to 6 hour window of increased nitric oxide levels. So you have a longer window of effectively removing the cholesterol and the foam cells from the lining of the arteries. So that's another important one to the diet that can really help create clean arteries in a short period of time. With regards to diet and stuff, prior to the 1920s, there was little to no cardiovascular disease. Then you come forward in time, and from the 1920s forward, you start to see an ever-increasing amount of people dying from heart attacks. And that was a time where people ate plenty of eggs and butter and lard and meats and fats, and there was no cardiovascular disease. So we have to look to something else. And one of them is the homogenization and pasteurization of milk. Both pasteurized milk is a contributor to cardiovascular disease, and the homogenization of milk is a contributor to cardiovascular disease. There's an enzyme in milk called xanthine oxidase that when you homogenize it, you rip open fat cells and distort them so that you encapsulate the xanthine oxidase so that rather than being degraded in the digestive process, it absorbs into the bloodstream and attaches to the arteries and creates damage. And it's actually been proven in studies to show that xanthine oxidase is very high in the arteries of some people's cardiovascular disease. Chlorine is another one. Ever since 1912 was when chlorine was introduced into municipal water systems. Chlorine oxidizes, damage, creates a free radical. That's how it kills pathogens, but it also damages the lining of the artery, creating arterial plaque. Studies done on, animals show that if you give chlorinated water to chickens, that, they'll actually end up with cardiovascular disease and within 3 months. So that's another one that people may have for the first few decades of their life, consume tap water, which in turn gave them plenty of chlorine that can damage the lining of the artery. And there was a actually in the Korean War, the young men that had been in the Korean War any length of time and died, also when they autopsied them, they had advanced cardiovascular disease. And so it was found that this was due to the water they were drinking. The water they used to drink was swamp water, and they had to heavily chlorinate it to protect them from dysentery and whatnot, and that chlorine gave them advanced cardiovascular disease within a few months. So,
Stephen, my dad was in World War II, and he told me that, we used to take these chlorine tablets with us for exactly what you're talking about. So, I mean, I heard that story. I haven't heard it ever again until you just mentioned it. So that has been buried in my mind for, 40 years. So, you're absolutely right. I had a quick question for you about something that Frank Sinatra's favorite pasta was something that was called al yaoul. And that is pasta with extra virgin olive oil, fresh cut garlic, crushed red pepper, and diced tomatoes with chilies on top.
Sounds
what do you
delicious.
think about that?
Yeah, I think it's delicious. I think it's great. I think, though, that the best grain to use to create the pasta is called einkorn. So that's the einkorn is the specific strain of wheat before it was hybridized. So it was the stuff that was grown in Egypt thousands of years ago and all that. So if you get the einkorn pasta and then make that with those toppings that you just mentioned, that would be the healthiest pasta to consume.
And how do you spell einkorn?
einkorn. And it's usually organic, but just make sure it's organic. And it's the best. It's delicious.
Stephen, I look forward to more broadcasts with you. Thank you so much for sharing your medical opinions and advice and counsel. Plus, if you'd like to call,
thank you, too, Vincent, for letting me on. Yeah.
Oh, my pleasure. 888-988-3325 or sgn80.com for Stephen Heuer.